Hello and welcome to podcast.init. Today we're recording on April 21st, 2015. Your hosts today are Tobias Macy and Chris Patty, and today we're happy to be speaking with a few of the members of the Kibe core development team. So, Ryan, if you would please start off by introducing yourself.
All right, yeah, I'm Ryan. I'm a developer in Kansas City. I originally am from Washington State. I've been programming since I was like 9 or 10. And my favorite part of programming is making the computer talk to other things and make them do stuff. So like from writing drivers to interface with hardware, or making my phone control my TV and computer.
Gabriele, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, yeah, so I'm Gabriele. I'm from France. I'm living near Paris right now. And I'm a computer scientist too, and I've been working in the industry for a few years now. And I started programming when I was a teenager, and I've been really interested in this and how to make things work the way I want. And I've been tinkering since then. And so I've been playing with Python because as soon as I found it, I was like in love because it was the first language to make so much sense. So I've been very happy to be able to work with it since. So that's how I came to Kibe, because it was a great framework in Python. So I came and gave a hand. So that's for me.
And Mathieu.
So, first, thanks for thinking to making a podcast about us. It was a real surprise for all of us. So, I'm Mathieu Rebel, 32 years old, and I love music and I love programming. And it's the same as Ryan. I learned about when I was 10 years old. It was literally writing something I got on a book, on a screen. Even if I didn't know how to run it, it was like opening, typing edit in command line, writing some things, and then try to rename the file with a .com, doesn't work, .execute doesn't work, .bat doesn't work. Until my uncle started to teach me what was programming exactly. Teach me to basic, teach me to Visual Basic. It was actually working in the police department. And then computer science, I did a lot of stuff. It's like full stack development, from the kernel, from the script, from managing servers, system administrator, web security, I don't know. And until I find Python, and I wanted to do a project with some music in Python. And well, the rest of the story, I guess, it will be on the next question we'll ask. But that's the thing.
So, how did you folks get introduced to Python initially?
Well, on my side, it was on Linux, LinuxFR. It's like a French website talking about a lot of Linux stuff and open stuff. And it was really when I was sick of doing all the same stuff in C, managing a list, thinking always about memory, creating class is taking a lot of time. And I was wanting to focus on the artist side. I wanted to create, not to do the same things all over again. And LinuxFR just showed me a solution about it, and it was called Python. This is how it started.
Well, I can go on that too, because I started developing with QBasic at first, and for a number of years when I was a teenager, I only tinkered with this, and when I started learning other languages, I was surprised because I didn't find anything that was as easy to learn, so it seemed like the power of to do complex things had to use much more complex languages, And so I was ready to let go of simplicity, but when I found Python, I was shocked because it was even simpler and a lot better than everything I had found until now. So I started when I was in a computer course. I was learning about a lot of stuff in computer science, but there was no course about Python. But I just found a little book about Python and learned the basics of the syntax. And got from there. I taught it on my own, taught it myself. So it was finding the right language for my mind. So it was quite a discovery.
That's very cool. It's always neat to hear when people sort of, have these problems, and especially when it's at the intersection of art and technology. That's great.
Ryan, why don't you go ahead and tell us about how you got introduced to Python?
Well, we needed to rewrite the software at our work, and the old software was written using Zulrunner. It was all in JavaScript, and it was just horrible. It was slow. It was hard to work on, poorly designed. So I was looking for something that I could use for making desktop applications. And I didn't really want to do C, C++. I wanted it to run on Linux. I wanted something with rapid development capabilities, and looking around, I found Python, and I fell in love with it once I got past the lack of braces.
Akshay, thank you for joining us. Could you just give a brief introduction and tell us about how you got introduced to Python?
Hi guys, Akshay here. Okay, how I got introduced to Python, essentially I started with, we were working on multi-touch table at that time, 2011 I think, and I was looking for frameworks that were working on those. The only two available options at that time were Kibe and MT4J. I don't know if you've heard of those.
MT4J, yeah.
Yeah. So in my research, I found out that the only option that was any good for me was Kibe. So that's how I started and came into Python. Actually, Kibe was the first thing that I worked on with Python.
Great. So, anyone who knows the story, can you tell us about how the Kibby project got started?
Well, yeah. It wasn't Kibby at the start. It was named PyMT. At the same time as what Akshay said about MT4G, we were Thomas Hansen was the initial creator of the toolkit because he was trying to make a user interface easily in multi-touch, and he didn't find anything that works for him. All the current solution was not working with multi-touch concept. It's like GTK, it was not even started. There is not even a multi-touch event on Linux. It was before everything. The tablet was not something you were using. So he started the toolkits, and at like 3-4 months after, I was having the same issues, having issue to find a good toolkit about it. And until I see the Linux FR option, see about Python, starting to play with it, and then I just found a Google code with PyMT on it. I asked Thomas to join the project, and it was very welcoming. We did a lot of cleanups. We have been able to join the Google Summer of Code via the NUI group because we were part on it. And we have been able to meet from now at least one time per year. And then, when PMT was quite great, Android was growing a lot, and at some point we were forced to rethink the toolkit to be able to be more performance and to have a graphic stack that works on mobiles. Because we were using the old OpenGL function, etc. It absolutely doesn't work on mobile. So we did like 3 iterations before getting Kibby the way it is currently. And all has happened in a week in US. We're at his parents' house alone in 1 week, and we just think about what we want and really didn't check what the other were doing. Just think what we like, how we would like to do it, and we were brainstorming the whole day. And we invented like the Kibe language, we invented the way of the input events are working right now, etc. There's a lot of things happened this week. And since then, Kibe is growing every month.
I think it's because you were working on this since at least 2 years, I think, from 2008 to 2010. And then when you decided to rework everything, you had a lot of stuff in mind that you wanted to change, and you had a lot to experiment at this point.
A lot to experiment, but for example, the Kibe language, at this time, I didn't even knew about QML of Qt. I heard about it a few months after, and yes, we are very similar, even if they are far more powerful than us. But it's really like a brainstorming. We try to write it in a way like we tried YAML, and it just didn't work. We tried a lot of other language, like what about XML? Even in Python, we were being able to build a whole UI and attach events in XML. It was working, but, well, doesn't please us.
Yeah, nobody likes XML.
But it's something that happened.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense in a way, right? If you're thinking in terms of what's the most elegant way to express a user interface, and other projects have done that at various points in times, right? And inevitably, when they choose that, nobody's happy with it. But you guys just had the foresight to say, we're not happy with it, and we're going to go a completely different direction. And we're certainly glad you did.
And this is something that drives us from the start, actually, because we never think about how the other were doing. Otherwise, we will fall into the same issues. If you think about GTK and Qt, the way they build UI, the way they use events, they have an historic. And we were being able to just create from the start what would be a modern way. But I guess if we were doing it again right now, we might just come up with a different solution, a different way to do things.
Yeah, that's right.
So this kind of leads really well into the next question. What made you folks choose Python as the basis for Kibby?
I don't have a real answer about it.
It's just the language that makes sense. That's all, I think.
It was the right language at the right time.
Yeah, I think you had used Python for some time before. You had tried a lot of technology, and if you did that in Python, it was maybe. You said earlier because you wanted something different than from C. So I guess that's the answer.
I was starting a project called Noya, and it was a software when you can put, actually it's kind of what you are doing on your day job, Gabriele. It's putting object on the table and playing music with it. And I was needed as simple things. Having a possibility to have buttons and labels in OpenGL.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no good solution for it, at least a solution that looks good and when you can do everything and easy to use. I was starting to write it in C++. And I'm spending so much time on it. This is how I discovered Python, PNT, and the rest of the story. Just as I say, it came up at the right time.
But
JavaScript.
But we don't know why Thomas chose Python.
No, and he's not here.
He's not here.
He's lost in the sands of time.
Yeah, lost. The story is lost. Okay.
All right.
Honestly, just guys, Python is at least a language that gives you time to focus on issues, not on the language itself.
Right.
Yeah,
You are not really dealing with the language.
That's
Always
what,
dealing
that's
with
what
the...
I love too, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Forgot about it. You just sometimes say, oh, I love Python, because you just gain so much time of doing things that on other language you will spend a lot more.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that makes Kibby so enjoyable to work with, right? Is because the language, as you said, it kind of allows you to be so expressive, and it kind of stays out of the way, and you can think in very high-level abstract terms. That I haven't had a lot of time to play with Kibby, but I was very impressed when I was doing the prep for this episode, how I was able to sort of like download Kibby, download the tutorial, and it's like, hey, I'm actually assembling, a UI on the screen with widgets and labels, and it all just kind of works and is very straightforward, and like it's not like you mentioned some of these other UI paradigms like Qt or GTK, where there's this whole huge like conceptual framework that you have to wrap your head around before you can make anything happen on the screen. I think it's awesome that you guys did choose Python, and also it's a testament to your good design that using Kibby is just such a pleasure to pick up and run with.
Well, some people, there are concepts in Kibby too, but you have to learn. And some people struggle more than others to get them. But it's easy once you got them. It's easy to forget about it because they fit your mind really well, I think. But so we try to improve the documentation because for some people it's more important than for others. But I do think the concepts are good. They may need better explanations sometimes, but I agree they are good.
So what were some of the major influences and inspirations for the way that Kibby was implemented? Or was it all just happy accident?
It's definitely a few happy accidents, I guess.
At least the Kibby language is an happy accident.
But the event system is more traditional, I guess. I would say the way.
The event system, yes, not the input one.
Okay.
So in Kibby, we have all the inputs are the same but separated. It's like you have the same base class, and it's not really subclass. It's like, to be simple, you have a touch event, and in the touch, you know what the touch is capable of. So on the documentation, we have
the profile.
There is a profile. Like the profile said, your touch is able to support a 2D position, a 3D position, is supporting a 2D pressure, or etc. So, and for each profile, you have a set of attributes that is added to the original touch class. So it's kind of, it's making the input completely abstract because it works on touchpad, but it can work also on a table with camera behind when it is able to detect the pressure or the shape of your finger. This is information that you can receive and use it, or it can just work with a simple cursor. And we tried also to use, I have been able in the Leapmotion beta developer, so I received even before the beta, I received a Leapmotion device. Yes. Yeah. And it was quite nice to try using it. We were almost being able to use it directly in Kibby. Just a little bit of wrapper and it was done. And the same for Kinect. And you cannot do that with other toolkit, honestly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In Kibby, you can just vote a little bit of provider and all your widgets will be able to use it, because also one of the big things in Kibby is every widget we wrote is built on the touch event, and the touch, by design, there can be multiple ones. So you always think about it. Meaning you can press 2 buttons at the same time on a Kibe application. You cannot do that on other applications. GDK, Qt, or even the web. It's not made of. You create 2 buttons on a form, you cannot press at the same time. You can do it in Kibe, and it's opening a lot of multi-user application.
You mentioned the conception of widgets, and that's something that I really appreciate in Kibe. When you're doing Python and using, for example, GTK or Qt or other frameworks that are wrappers of C++ libraries, and you don't have access to the underlying layer, you can't extend things the way you want. And when you are working in a library that is built in the language you are using, and especially in as dynamic a language as Python, you are free to extend about anything, and you can plug your parts just the way you want. And I think it's a freedom that you rarely have, even because, for example, if you extend the C++ program, you don't have as much freedom to tinker with the elements of the framework as in Python, because things can be closed, things can be built, and you aren't supposed to integrate too much with the framework. In Python, you have quite a lot of power at this level, and I think it's more like being on the shoulder of a giant, which is Python, and having the feature at the right level, just so you can grab them. And for the touch system, and just like over the things, it's a bit of a foreign to the object-oriented philosophy. So that instead of putting classes on things, you have one class, but even if you have multiple classes to describe your events, it's not the object model which shows what the event is. It's the data inside, and that's I think it's indeed quite a good idea, quite a powerful
abstraction.
Abstraction, yes, perfect.
But I guess that's
a bit like duct typing, but for events. It's if it has something, you can use it this way.
So to answer to the question is like the influence of or inspiration on the Kibe design. It's like Python itself.
Yeah,
that's great.
That is very cool. It's like not only is Kibe written in Python, but it's also designed to be Pythonic in nature.
In the concept, because what is Pythonic? When you start Python, you read a lot about being Pythonic. This is Pythonic, this is not. Where's the definition of that? There's absolutely no documentation saying this is something that looks great in Python, this is not. So at the time of writing Kibe on Parenti,
there is the Zen of Python. But there was a great conference about this in the last PyCon that I watched on YouTube last week. It was explaining the difference between writing PEP 8 compatible code and writing Pythonic code, and it was very, very interesting. So I think I don't remember who did it, but it was really great.
Yeah, it was Raymond Hedinger. I was there for that talk, and he definitely did a very good job of that. So we'll certainly add a link to that in the show notes so that other people can watch it, because it was
great.
It really did give a very good concrete example of what is Pythonic and what is not. Because like you, when I first started learning Python, I kept coming across these references of Pythonic versus non-Pythonic code, and it's very subjective, and there doesn't really seem to be any firm conclusion as to what really makes something Pythonic. It's more just a way that it feels when you're dealing with it. So
yeah,
he really did a great job of distilling it down to its essence. So
speaking of distilling things down to their essence, one of the amazing things about Kibe is that comparatively simple to learn. I mean, I understand that there are some concepts that you have to wrap your head around, but as I said to you, I was able to sort of at least pick up the rudiments of it, and if not run with it, then walk with it in a matter of a couple of hours. And that hasn't been my experience with various other UI frameworks that I've attempted to use, like Qt, or I remember getting pretty frustrated with Tickle TK back in the day. So, how did you folks come up with a design that embodies this ease of use? I can only imagine it was on purpose. It can't have been just a happy accident, can it?
I think what Mathieu described earlier, it's and something I try to do sometime too, is to say, okay, forget about how technically things can be done, but what would I want to use? It's like a design-driven development. You say, okay, I want to use something like this. Let's imagine it's possible, and then you write the code that you would want to write, and then you try to make it happen. And so just put some code. Wouldn't it be nice if this code worked this way? And I think that's something very Pythonic. But when I write Python, a lot of time I don't have to look at the documentation. I say, what if it worked this way? That would just be nice. And you write it and it works. And that's, I think what's the pleasure of Python is that things just comes naturally. You don't have to check. The people thought a lot of time about what would be the most natural way to do one thing, and you can come up with it and be right 90% of the time. And I think building the API this way is just what I would call Pythonic. So you can just avoid experimenting with API even before building it. I think it's the key for this.
This is what my experience has been with Kibe in terms of designing. What we generally do is, first of all, look into how it's been done in other interfaces. For example, let's see how something is implemented in Android or in GT or in Qt. But after that, after first looking into how it's done in other places, we generally tend to ask ourselves, how would it be more intuitive? How would it be simpler? And how can it be made in such a way that it can be, just something that clicks into your mind and something that you can just write down without having to look at the documentation. And generally, what we do normally try to do is pass everything to Tito or Matthew, for that matter, and that's what is on IRC we call him Tito. So he generally makes it very simple and lays it out how it should generally be, and he has an art for it, for making things as simple as possible. So even if the rest of us miss it, if it goes through him, it's simplified to such a place that it just becomes very simple, very straightforward for anyone to use.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Have some pros.
So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you have experienced in building Kibby, both either early on or most recently? Some of the biggest challenges that you've come across, whether it's in the design or the actual development, or maybe in making it performant enough.
I think performance is definitely the biggest one there. The biggest challenge. It's really hard to get everything to work the right way and get it all fast and everything, especially when you get onto these mobile devices where we're kind of almost trying to put a square peg in a round hole by putting Python on these Java-based Android devices. But really, I think that's the biggest challenge, is just getting it to work and be fast. Getting that native speed. Yep. And on desktop, it's pretty good most of the time, but on the mobile devices, it's a little harder.
I bet. I mean, to me, that was one of the things that really blew my socks off about Kibby is that this one toolkit works so well on the desktop, on mobile phones, on mobile tablets. I mean, that is an achievement unto itself.
And you compare it to Java, where Java is really all about being heavily multi-threaded. And that's what these devices are made to do, is these heavily multi-threaded applications, and we have this Python application that's stuck in one thread.
Yeah.
And on it, I have a word about it. Even if I talked with Kido about it 2 years ago, but still, all the current solutions that is going on the community, like PyPy, it's not going to work for us in mobile. Okay, they have a good solution that will work only on desktop. If you want to do mobile development, this is not how you need to think. And I'm very, very, very sad to see that there is absolutely no consideration about mobile development in the Python community, except for us. It's like 3 weeks ago, I got an invitation to be part of the language summit on Python. And because they wanted to talk about the mobile part, in the end, there is absolutely no discussion about it. Still, there is so much thing to do on the language itself. Can you imagine, like right now, to be able to support Android, we still need to patch Pythons to be able to cross-compile it. This is not something that is supported from the start in the language. So it might not be something that you can understand or realize, but for me, having a language that I need to patch, to change, to be able to support a new platform like Android, and it's like Linux, or being able to compile for ERM from my desktop, doesn't look great. And this is one of the steps. There's so many other steps. And then fixing the GUI. A lot of, even Guido say, it's not an issue, etc. On Android, there is no multiprocessing, and you will never be able to use it, because this is not how
they don't want it. They don't want. I tried. I spent an hellish week trying to make it work like 2 years ago, and in the end I understood that it wouldn't work because there's a system feature that is lacking, and Android dev don't want it into, because that could be a performance problem. So there's just no way for threads to communicate and to do what's needed for multiprocessing. So you just can't have it. So you have to find other solution indeed, and we have services to delay, to put tasks in the background, but it's clearly not enough. We have to find something.
This is absolutely not enough. Let's say you have a request, you are doing some, you are loading images asynchronously. Okay, so you are putting time for getting your data from the web, decoding it, the PNG into RGBA, uploading it into the GPU, etc. There is one part we can make it a little bit faster with threads, but because it's threads and it's Python threads, it's the same as having just a callback in a clock on your main thread.
It's actually worse. Threads they are just good to avoid blocking the UI, but they won't make anything faster. Except if you are able to release the GIL, but you have to go very low level for that. So it's no, and you have to. It's very limited. You can't do a lot without the GIL. So
yes, and I don't. So if anybody remember about the project, I heard about somebody is trying to solve that by starting one interpreter for each core. Okay. And is able to move Python object from one interpreter to another.
I didn't know about this.
And so in that way, you might be able to do some work on one interpreter completely separated on one core, but in the same process. And when you're done with it, you can put the object on the queue and get it on the first thread without any cost, without any GIL. That would be awesome if it actually work on mobile. it can be a solution for it.
It sounds like to me, it's really interesting hearing you guys talk about that. I was a Ruby person before I was a Python person. I've been into Python now for 4 or 5 months, and I saw many of the same discussions over there. Like, it seems like the old school dynamic languages are all kind of struggling with these same issues. They don't really transition very well to mobile platforms, and they don't really have a good concurrency story. They really don't do threading very well. Anyway, it seems like hope there should be like either a new generation of these languages or maybe some new language that supports these paradigms out of the box.
Yeah, if you want to support multiple cores and to be able to transition to share memory this way, very dynamic languages are not really able to help. So not yet. Maybe there is some discussion.
Absolutely. So if you folks were to start the project over, what would you do differently?
First of all, if you don't mind, I'd like to mention one thing. Okay, one advantage of Kibe on mobile essentially is that the whole UI is based on OpenGL. I don't think we talked about that, but because of that, essentially what happens is, anything that is based on graphics is essentially very fast. And if you really want to just do some shaders and stuff like that, that part is not bogged down by anything. So that is one of the advantages that is, not available on other languages. In Kibe, shaders and effects that use shaders are made very easy. Inclement Alexander Taylor, he did an effect widget, and even before that, using shaders was pretty easy in Kibe. So, in that sense, on mobiles, many things can be made very easy. So, if you were, let's say, doing anything related to OpenGL or graphics directly, that wouldn't be bogged down.
But this is one example of the design we choose. It's like not showing OpenGL to the users, and even if it's not fully complete, like there is still a lot of room for improvement here. But still, we have simple class that you can just use it to build your graphics, and all the OpenGL is optimized and done in the background. It's completely transparent, and this is what is making Kibe on the graphic fast. Even if some people are making even faster with new project, still the initial solution is quite better than the other one can be.
And it's actually a pretty thin wrapper. It's not very hard to go around it and to poke at the low level. And I think that's something that's quite a success too in the design, that you can easily use very advanced features like stencil or touching graphics textures, making them wrap. Or modifying, building mesh or things like this, but it's very, very easy, because to do the same thing in raw OpenGL would be like, it's a nightmare for simple-minded people like me. So. But about performances, the graphic part is really great. It's not the issue. You can do a lot if you manage to be careful about the important parts. You can do a lot because you have all the full power of the GPU. What's hard is if you have number crunching or a lot of heavy operations to do in the background. So that's a bit harder.
Yeah, most of the time, this is your code or your Python that will make the application slow. If you are building an UI with 1,000 widgets, you might have an issues with it on mobile. Instead, if you are able to write one widget that can manage the 100 behind, let's say if the 100 were blocks on 2D games, I don't know, or a maze, so you can find a way to manage it yourself, not using the Kibby widget. Then you will execute less Python, and the graphic part will just follow you as you want.
Yeah, I think that's what Kovac is pushing a lot on Kivent to do for game development. There's still a lot of work on it, but it's very promising for heavy game development with Kibby.
It's a game further to Kibby, yes. It's a very good project.
To answer the question on what we would change in the project if we were to start it from scratch today, I think we already discussed about this. We were essentially looking for changes that we need to do in a major release, let's say, so something like 2.0. And for that, we discussed on things like this. Essentially, one of the major drawbacks, as we discussed earlier, is the concurrency. So I would hope we would be somehow able to solve that issue, because that is one of the major issues. Considering even your smartwatch is going to have multiple cores, Python should be able to take advantage of that.
About that, just one word. I was talking about it earlier on IRC. It's about React.js, and I read a few things about React Native. So it's a project from Facebook that JavaScript is driving UI, the UI of your application. And the way it works on the native part is like they have a thread executing the UI, but all the UI is driven from JavaScript on another thread. Okay? If you think about Android, they do the same. They have a UI thread, they have a method that is run on UI thread. So you have your UI thread, and you have threads around it that can control and push things into your UI. This is something we completely miss in Kibe by design. And the biggest thing is because we are using OpenGL. And OpenGL requires you to execute all the commands in the main thread. If you think about shared context, etc., we can't go this way because we have a lot of platforms to support, and means we cannot just use it. So we are stuck with this approach right now, and we would need to redesign it from scratch. I completely agree with Akshay. It's like maybe trying to find a way of having a thread just displaying the UI and focus on that, loading the images, doing all the OpenGL, and then having your main thread driving it. We might get better performance, but again, you cannot assume it unless you have an experiment about it.
Yeah, but would it be hard currently, for example, to say, okay, I put everything in all my logic in separate thread, and I only everything that will change a property that affect a widget is like in call later, schedule once. You think it would be a lot of work?
It will be a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay.
So what are some of the most interesting or strange things that you've seen Kibby used for?
I think the coolest thing I've seen Kibby used for is what Gabriele works on at work. That object is table. That's just really cool.
Well, if you want, I can. Thanks a lot for those props. Yeah, I'll explain a little for people. So I may be a bit unusual because I'm one of the people not using currently Kibby for mobile or platforms. I'm using it on big tables, like giant iPads from 40 to 80 inches diagonal. So we are putting Kibby application on these tables, and we are using the point that objects do when we put them on the table, and to detect features, and this way we check that the ID of the object, and we use the protocol TUIO to send this data to other applications. So this way we can build applications that make use of objects. And this is all done in Kibe, so it's quite cool, I admit. But I've seen a lot of cool things done with Kibe, and things I didn't have an idea that people will do. There's a project that is using Kibe for commanding, sending commands to telemetry equipment for cars and prototypes testing. There are Kibe being used for educational games for children. There is Kibe used in medical equipment for
everywhere.
On Android applications for pharmaceutics or every industry. It's quite cool to see Kibe used in all sorts of places like this. So I think what's quite cool about it is that the framework doesn't force you in a direction. You can take it and build what you want with it. So it's very interesting.
Yeah,
Very cool.
The framework is really a toolbox for the developer. You can use it just you are making buttons, inputs, scroll, view, etc. Or you can do a complete custom UI, and then it's the artist inside you that is speaking. You can do anything with it.
Neat. Gabriele, do you think you'd be willing to, or can you, I don't know if your work will allow, but if you can, maybe put a link to anything that's out there about your work project with the big table.
Of course. Of course my work will allow. Yeah,
Oh, cool.
I'll put a link so people can check what we do. And if they enjoy it, that would be great.
Okay, one of the coolest things that I've ever seen Kibe being used for was done by Matthew. Now, he used it for an interactive movie. What it essentially did was...
It was a project last year, Digital Stories. I was contracted to be able to make a system for displaying movies on the theaters, and a lot of people in the rooms was having lasers, and they was able to point out something on the movies. Okay, so we have an infrared camera that is looking on the screen, and we are able to analyze them and put it back into the movies. So there is multiple movies. One is, like, say, it's a boy who is trying to lay a girl, but he wants to show it's the best boy ever. So every step is trying to do something like drinking the beer faster than his friends. And to drink the beer faster, all the audience must put the pointer on the beer of the heroes and move the pointer as fast as possible until there is no more beer. Okay, and then he gains some points, and there is another game when the audience must follow a shape, and the shape is starting to shrink more and more and more, and if there is too much pointer of size the shape, then he lost, or if all the audience stay in the shape, he win, etc. So you get the idea. And at the end, you have an amount of points, and depending on the points, the plot is not the same at the end. This is one usage of Kibe really fun and interesting to explore.
I don't suppose by any chance you have a link to that you can share?
Yes.
Excellent.
That'd be great. So, what are some of the changes and features that you're particularly excited about in the future of Kibe?
I think a big thing is going to be getting in some multi-language support, allowing right-to-left text and reshaping of some of these Eastern scripts where a character looks different when it's next to a certain character, and just opening up Kibe to more people in that way.
Yeah.
So it can work in their language.
That's true.
Yeah, that's another interesting challenge because a lot of the text is actually quite complicated to display, and we're doing everything in OpenGL means we have a lot of the burden on us. So, but thankfully there are some libraries we can make use of, but it's still quite some work.
And even the standard solutions like Harfbuzz, there's virtually no documentation for it. You just have to go and find examples, look at other people's code. That's really all there is available for it. So
in terms of features, we were essentially looking to, change everything we can in terms of next we're looking forward to a 2.0 release. So hopefully we'll have dot releases before that, but for 2.0 release, hopefully we can fix almost as many issues that we have, essentially for multi-threading and extra other things like that. And one other thing that we didn't talk about was UI. Right now, the widget sets that we have were generally started as something that was geared towards desktops. They weren't really started from the ground up thinking mobile in mind. So one of the things that I'd like to see come up next is widgets that are designed keeping in mind mobile, and they're speedy and fast performant on mobiles.
Yeah, and integration in platform-specific UIs, it's something that people ask quite a lot. Even if these days people use themes a lot more, like thankfully, thanks to Google Material UI, they understand that they can design the UI in the way they want, and Kibe gives a lot of freedom for that. So I think there may be less demand for it in the future, but even on desktop, for example, being able to integrate more in the UI the user is used to, maybe an important step to do, and even using, for example, shortcuts or accessibility features. There's quite a lot to do, and I think something to note is that Kibe historically has not been developed with a long roadmap. It was like, I need this, let's try to add it and see how it works. And thinking the design, but one step at a time. And so there's not a lot of long-term features that we are planning, and we try to do that for 2.0, as was said before. But so we have a wiki page about this, so if people are interested, we'll put a link on that. But,
absolutely.
Maybe just I would like to talk about one thing about it. It's like, even if the podcast is about Kibe is just one piece of all the projects that we as core developer are managing. It's like we are doing Python for Android. It's a separate project that is being able to you can compile Python and some of the Python extension on Android. So most of the time you need to patch the extension if you want to be able to compile it. We have exactly the same for iOS. It's not Python for iOS because it is a separate project and application, so we call it Kibe iOS. We also manage, we invented actually, because there is no good project about it, a library to use the native language of the platform directly from Python. For example, if you want to touch some of the Java API on Android, before it was very complex to get it. It's like you need to write a GNE wrapper that will call you Java, and the GNE you wrap it into a Python extension, and then you can use it. Let's say there is absolutely no contribution on this part. Then we invented PyGenius. So because Java, you can introspect it. Then we build PyGenius that just use the power of the Java language to be able to do the duck typing as you would do on the Java. And you can call directly methods that even if you didn't import them. And this is very cool because we have also another project called the Kibe Remote Shell. You just start the Kibe application on your mobile. it gives you an SSH server. Then you can connect onto it, and you have a Python console where you can start to import Pygenius and test the Android APIs in live. You can create an Android widget in Python and add it to your Kibe application, etc. This is something cool. We don't have the same for iOS, but it can be completely doable. And the same we do for Pygenius. We do the same for iOS with Objective-C, and it's called Pythonic. So as you can see, Kibe is only the GUI part, but to be able to execute it and allow the user to use the feature on your phone, we have also a lot of other tools. I miss the one most important one is Player. And Player is also a good invention because we build all the first step. So the toolchain, then the Pythonic and Pythonic is like the wrapper to be able to call the language, the destination language, which are our Objective-C. Now we have Player, and it will abstract all the features of platform-specific features. Like if you want to access to the GPS, you don't want to write specific code for Android and iOS and other platforms. So we have just a facade, as we called, and we have different implementation per platform. And we have that for a lot of things. That's it. So currently this is that. The future of Kibe, it's bad that the question is only for the Kibe, because we did a lot outside Kibe, and we have also a card to play on that. As you said, Gabriele, people were asking about, is there a way to make, to create native interface in Python? And there is absolutely no good alternative today. And we have all the tools to build a new library, not Kibe, because it doesn't work the same, and I'm not sure could do it with it. But if we will start from scratch, like Ionic did, we have all the tools for it. It might be one of the future of a new Python library.
Yeah, because we are trying to cover a lot of use cases, and maybe some of them are not covered correctly or can't be correctly covered in
HTML
Kibe.
rendering.
So, this is actually a very, very bad thing to try with Kibe.
Yeah, Kibe have no tool to be able to do HTML rendering, and we will not be able to provide, not soon, not in the future, because it's a very big things to have in OpenGL. This is also our core issues. It's a big point for us, and this is where all the performance is going on. Because we're in OpenGL, try to find a library that works. You can try WebKit directly, it's just a mess. And there is project around it that trying to do it, and it's not going to work on mobile soon either. And except if you want dependencies that cost you, I don't remember how much, 50 megabytes, let's say, maybe even more.
Yeah, but one of the things is
sense.
that we did effectively the things are separate, and Python for Android, Kibe iOS, and Player and Pygenius, everything is separated and can be reused. So indeed, we tried not to put everything in Kibe, and so people have to understand that if they want something in Kibe, in the Kibe ecosystem, and not everything, they can go and work with us anyway. We are open to and we are very open for help in the various projects outside of Kibe. So they can come.
This is one of the best examples. It's using. People are using it as an alternative of the current solution that's not working very well, and we are very performant on it. So there is a lot of contribution and a lot of fork on this project. So this is awesome.
That's very cool. The Kibe Remote Shell project in particular sounds really, really neat. I mean, I can just envision people sort of live coding on their mobile devices from their the comfort of their laptop, it sounds really, really nifty.
Yeah.
Yes.
Except it's just for testing. You have no way to save what you did.
Just a shell,
So-
but it could be improved. It's just
Yes,
an SS shell, but it could be improved.
Remember that we are very few active contributor.
Mm.
And the community is growing, in my point of view, very fast, and we are not a lot to handle everything. We are getting so much backlog.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
a lot more new users than new contributors, but
Yeah,
that's,
and
the
maybe
way
this
it
is something that can kill us, because if you are not be able to answer everything and letting all the thing goes by itself, it's not good. But what can we do at?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the last questions that we have here, I'll save it for that, but maybe we can help with that.
That would be great.
So yeah, before we get to that last question, just one more. Wondering if there are any new platforms or operating systems that you are looking to add support for, such as the Sailfish OS from Jala or the new Ubuntu phone operating system.
I've been wanting to help the Ubuntu support, but I've had a few look at it and tried when we were adding SDL, because that was a path for it, but I didn't find the time in the last 6 months to work on it. So if anybody is interested, that would be cool. I'm pretty sure Firefox OS won't be possible, but because
Don't say impossible.
well, it would be, but if somebody is able to do it, that would be great. But I don't think the Mozilla people would be happy about this. But well, if you have an idea, I wouldn't say impossible for you, okay? But
I think it's a question of practicality on Firefox OS. The specs of the base phones are so low that right now I think it's not practical.
yeah, it's very the cheap Firefox phone is quite low spec. Yeah.
Very cool. So now here is that question that I mentioned previously. This is your opportunity to rally support to your cause. Is there anything in particular that you would like to ask our listeners to help with? It can be something as simple as, you guys need help fixing some documentation problems, or help dealing with the backlog, or whatever. Like, how can our listeners help? Because Kibby is an awesome project and it deserves to be supported.
Well, probably the best way is just people get out there, start using it, start figuring out, what do they like about it, what do they not like, what could be improved upon it. The feedback helps a lot. There's always room for help in the documentation and examples, especially. We get a lot of people complaining there's not enough examples of how to do things.
Yeah, there are a lot of things they can try to reproduce bugs. If they see something, maybe some bugs have been resolved and not fixed and not marked as fixed, or if somebody pushed a pull request and that nobody found the time to test it, they can say, oh, it works for me too. But that's a lot of help for us, because we have confidence that we can check it, and it will probably be a good work to merge. And giving feedbacks. There is a lot of work on the documentation already, but it's a big documentation. So it's always great to have a look and see maybe things have been changed or they need improvements. That's always great to look. And anyway, I'm sure a lot of people use Kibe and are not sure if they can help. And they just have to know, but we are very welcoming to the help. We don't always have the time to react immediately, but we try.
Yeah. I'd like to add this thing. Now, GSOC selection for students just ended, and there'll be a lot of students that didn't get through. I'd like to tell them, they shouldn't just wait for GSOC. If they really want to go forward, they should just go ahead and choose a project of their liking. let's say if you like Kibe, just go there, start contributing to it. Even if you weren't selected for the SOC, just continue working on the project that you're interested in. And, just start small. Start with some simple documentation fixes. In fact, this is not just for students. For anyone who's interested in helping out Kibe, we really need a lot of people helping out. And if you can just start smaller, just add some simple documentation fixes. And GID Hub makes it very easy. All you have to do is create a login, open a web form, just look at the documentation. We feel even if it's just as simple as, English correction or grammar correction, just go ahead and do it online and then submit. All you have to do is click on a submit button and a new PR is submitted. That's it. That's how easy it is to get in. Now, once you get in, and for people who are already aware of, they're a bit more advanced, they can get into other stuff. Slowly, either gradually increase your commitment level, or if you are comfortable, straight away go to the number of open issues on GID Hub and see what you can work at. And I'm mentioning this in terms of GSOC because, contributing to any open source project helps. It helps not only the open source project itself, but it also helps you, the contributor, in terms of adding to your portfolio. And right now, open source is a very good way to add to your portfolio. A lot of the major companies are looking for people experienced with open source.
Absolutely. I think it's no accident that LinkedIn now has a very prominent place in your LinkedIn profile to add your GitHub repository.
Yeah.
Oh, could I miss that?
I have two things to add about it. It's like you guys asking for that we are open to all the contribution. It's almost the case for everybody. A lot of open source projects, right? What you are really missing is people that are able to each time have a step back about the feedback of others and giving us a good solution for it. Because we have so much backlog that even if we have a lot of more contribution, if it's documentation issues, most of the time is merged right away because they are always great. But when people are starting just to ask a little bit of question, and then when we have to talk about it, it's taking a lot of time for all of us. It would be nice if great people also can contribute us directly with solution, or having asking to maintain a project like PyGenius or Python for Android, just having a look from time to time, like 7 days per week would be awesome on Python for Android, just to answer to other people saying, okay, your recipes on Python for Android is great, you have a few things to change, etc. We, even on the small team, cannot handle so much. It's already too much, in my point of view. So we need maintainers, and that's one of the first points. The second point I want to raise, if somebody in the world would like to sponsor us, even for the Kibe Association, to be able to buy new hardware. The current one we are using already too much for building our unit test, and Matam, another core developer, is trying to use it also for releasing Kibe nightlies as a build package. We are able only to run Linux, Windows. When you start to run iOS, OS X, all the server is crashing. We are very limited by the environments we are testing on. And I'm sure if we have better hardware, we will be able to do the nightlies. Madam would be very happy to push all of it in it. There is Kibe iOS when I want to do the nightlies, but there is no hardware for it. And at some point, we need also to increase our unit test coverage, This is very, very low. Every time we move something on the code, even in Python 400 on Kibe, it might have an impact somewhere else, and we don't see it. We see it only because a user is reporting us an issue, or we as core developer are using a part, we are recompiling master, and then it breaks. This is not cool. This is something that can be seen before that, and this is a critical point of the project. There is a lot of source code, a lot of widgets we need to maintain. We are looking forward to the version 2, and we don't have the tool to be able to do it in a clean way, I would like to say.
So talking about increasing unit test coverage, it strikes me that might be a tricky thing for people who say, I want to help, I want to dive in, right? Because in order to write tests for code, you have to have a really solid understanding of how it works and what you're testing.
Nope.
Not necessarily. That's if I can chime in, that's actually how I started helping Kibe in the very first place, because I found a bug, and I say, okay, I just want to check if it's really a bug, and reduced my code to very simple. And when it was simple enough to test directly, well, it was nearly a unit test, so it could be introduced directly in the real library. So just doing a little test case of a simple bug, it's already quite helpful actually. If you look at a bug report and you generate a new test case for it, it's a very, very, very cool contribution.
Well, I won't like to discourage anyone from writing unit test case directly, but I think what Matthew was hinting at was we recently added a link on a web page for donation directly. We lack the hardware, and we would definitely love to get some new hardware for testing. And as he said, we need new hardware to be able to set up nightly packages for testers and stuff like that. We need a lot more influx in terms of money also. So the best way would be if someone could hire Matthew directly, I think, for working with Kibe.
Full time.
Honestly, at least supporting for the hardware would be cool. You don't know about it, guys, but for example, the new reboot of the Kibe iOS, the new version of the toolchain, it was done to support all the different CPU, not only RAM, but also the 64 version and the emulators. Okay. And last week I booked one new iPad to be able to finally test it. But it's like nobody else will do it and will offer me an iPad, and it's very hard to ask that on the internet. I don't know how to do. And, well, I don't know how to say. But yes, sponsoring at least the Kibe project may give us a little more space to buy things, and at least maybe put bounties on the biggest issue to be able to make the community participating more on the biggest issue we got.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tricky problem, right? Like I'm definitely, and I'm guessing Tobias isn't either. Neither of us are particularly connected with mobile hardware manufacturers. You know, I can certainly contribute some cash, but it's tough. I don't know how to hook you up with those hardware manufacturers. I mean, one thing that I would suggest is, you know, yours is a project that an awful lot of people get an awful lot of value out of. Maybe a way to handle this might be to reach out to the Python community through things like, you know, the Python weekly newsletter or PyCoders or that kind of thing to basically say, hey, the Kibe project is struggling. We're looking for hardware and we're looking for sponsors to help us get that hardware. I think you might be surprised, you know, people working in these various companies might see that and be able to help you out.
That's a great idea.
That's definitely a good idea that we should take up on.
Yeah, there is a lot to do.
That's great. Well, we like to do, with every episode, we like to do picks. These can be anything that you're interested in or like or want to recommend to our listening audience. It can be technology related or not. I usually recommend a beer because I like craft beer. So, Tobias, why don't you get us started?
Sure. So I'm going to keep it short. First pick I'm going to choose is the Zeal offline documentation browser. So for people who use Mac OS, there's a similar project called Dash, and Zeal is the version of that will run on Linux. So it's a way for you to download the documentation for various programming languages and libraries and have access to them when you're not online. So if you're on a plane and you want to be able to look up a particular Python method, you have it stored right on your laptop. And the next pick that I'll choose is a comic strip called Commit Strip. It's actually published in French and English, and it's just a daily comic strip about the life of developers, and it's usually got some pretty amusing content, so definitely recommend that.
So I just want to second your recommendation of Zeal. Before I was made very happy and given a Mac laptop in my current gig, I was working with a Linux desktop and a Windows laptop, and I had been a huge fan of Dash for years and still am now that I'm back on the Mac, but when I was working in Linux and Windows, Zeal was certainly a really excellent analog and does the job quite nicely. And for anybody who hasn't used this kind of thing before, what's super cool about these things is you can hook them into your IDE or editor of choice, and with the dock all offline and already downloaded and everything, it's like it really is instantly at your fingertips. And the way the UI works is really, really kind of nice. I highly recommend it. So I'll move on to my picks real quick. And the first pick that I will pick is, unshockingly, a beer. Jack's Abbey Brewery here in Framingham, Massachusetts is a brewery that I'm rather fond of. I haven't yet tried a beer from them that I really disliked. And they make a beer called Smoke and Dagger. And it is a really delicious dark beer with a lightly smoky flavor. It's considered to be a Rausch beer, which is not a variety that I have a lot of experience with, but it's really tasty. I've tasted some German smoke beers that a friend of mine is into, and it was just a little too much for me. It was kind of like falling face first into a the ashes of a campfire with your mouth open. But exactly. But this one's pretty tasty, dark and malty. I highly recommend it. So the next thing I want to recommend is a movie, which for some reason here in the United States, it was slammed by the critics. The critics really didn't like it, and I really don't understand. I think they're on crack because I think it's a really good movie and is a story that was well told, well acted, and just worth seeing. And that's called A Woman in Gold, or Woman in Gold, excuse me. There's no A in there. And it's about this woman and her family pre-World War II, in Austria, when the Nazi Germans were sort of taking over, and about what happened to her and her family, and the story of a particular priceless piece of art that used to hang in her household. And I won't say any more than that. I will just say, if you look it up on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever your other favorite movie site is and see it rated low by the critics, ignore it and go see it anyway, because I think it's really good. And the last pick that I have is The last pick that I have is... Geez, I lost my last pick. Well then, I guess I'm going to keep it short and leave it at 2. Matthew, what kind of picks do you have for us?
The first one will be Yataf. I'm not sure about the pronunciation. Is yet another Python formatter from Google's.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it's actually a formatter that you just feel you give your Python file, and it gives you a very great Python file with works with pip8, and this is the most working tools I ever seen from all the other ones like AutoPep 8 or Pep 8.5, if I remember well. And thanks to this project, on some of the project I'm working on, I just use the tools to clean all the files, and then with my student, I can ask them to focus on the code and not on the formatting of Pythons when they just start to learn Python. So it's a good tool for me. That was my first pick. My second pick will be a project I'm working on. It's learnchinese.com. It's not really related to Python, even if all the project is running on Python and it's built with Flask and Jinja, etc., and very cool HTML5 stuff. Learn Chinese is a website that will bring you can learn Chinese in a story. Okay, you will be a little dragon, and you will have a ninja, is a cat, who will try to help you in the world of all the Chinese world, and you will learn vocabulary, grammar, and then talking with your brother as a dialogue. So we are using the latest HTML5 web audio and web speech things to make it happen. It's still in beta. You can ask for a subscription, but we are launching a Kickstarter soon, and every feedback will be welcomed. And one last bit, just because you said beer, I'm sure you might never taste it. I tasted only one time in my life. It's called, in French, La Rince Cochon. And so La Rince Cochon is a Belgian beer, and it's made in, how do you call, I miss the vocabulary, where the beer is made?
A brewery?
Brewery, okay. Not an automatized one, but an old one, very old one. Everything is done by hand. Okay, it's artisanal, it's the word? No.
Yes.
Yes, that's the word, yeah.
Okay, so it's one of the last beers done in artisanal in Belgium. And I have been able to visit it only one time in Sunday. And after the visit, in front of the sun, we drink a whole beer. I was completely out of nowhere. It was very hard to get back to my house after that. And it's very light.
Just one.
Yes, just one, but very, very light, very tasty. It doesn't even look like blonde or brown beer, etc. It's almost water, okay? But on the taste, you feel like it's a beer, very light, very tasteful. I liked it. That's it.
Wow, that sounds delicious. If you could, at the end of the show, give us links to that beer and those projects, that would be awesome.
Okay.
So let's see. Akshay, you're up.
Okay. First thing that I'd like to share is essentially mangoes. I'm from India and I love mangoes, and you can try them out in this season. Is the best thing to have. And the second thing I'd like to share is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen Kibe being used for. It was essentially a tic-tac-toe playing machine being controlled remotely by a Kibe controller. So I had no practical purpose other than essentially just playing tic-tac-toe with a machine using a controller.
That's very cool. Actually, I'm a huge fan of mangoes, and I don't know about where you are, but here in the United States, this particular season, you get these yellow mangoes. Sometimes they're called champagne mangoes. Oh man, those things are so delicious. I've got two in my kitchen ripening right now.
Amazing.
Ryan, how about you?
All right, well, for my pick, I used to be a smoker, and I've since quit smoking and switched to e-cigarettes. Haven't had an actual cigarette in almost a year now. And so my pick is a flavor, and it is called the Milkman by Vaping Rabbit. It's described as a frosted fruit tart milkshake. So like a milkshake made with Pop-Tarts, and it's nice and smooth and delicious and fruity and makes nice big clouds.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny. E-cigarettes seem like a trend these days. Nicotine has never been my drug of choice, but I was at ChefConf a few weeks ago, and it was just amazing to me how many people had these things out and were using them. It's really quite a thing. So, Gabriele, what picks do you have for us?
Well, I have two picks, and the first one is the technology, as you suggested, and I'm using a Windows Manager that I don't think a lot of people use, but I think it's the best thing in the world, so I will encourage people to use it, and it's called i3WM, and it's on i3wm.org, and it's like awesome but better, and way better, and it's really the most flexible thing I ever seen, but quite easy to use. So I will give the link, and I wanna encourage people trying it and be out. And my second pick is a French comic author writing comic BD, comic strips on the internet, and he translates some of his strips in English, so you can read it too. And it's an amazing artist, and he's quite geeky, and he has a lot of very cultural geek things, and some pixel art are wonderful sometimes, and a lot of steampunk, very and crazy stories, and a wonderful artist. So Boulet is called Boulet, and his website is Boulet Corp, and I'll give the link too. And it's really a masterpiece. In the continuous producer of masterpiece. So I would encourage you to read this guy. And he did a collaboration with Zach Weiner, who is the author of SMBC comic that a lot of geek knows. So it's quite it's becoming slowly known, I think, in the US, but not yet as much as he should. So
yeah, I second Gabriele. Boulet is amazing. I love it.
So that's my topics.
Very cool. Well, hey, this has been an incredible episode. I have learned so much, and I was already impressed with Kibby, and I now realize there's a whole constellation of sub-projects and co-projects under the covers there, and I've walked away even more impressed. First of all, thank you all, and especially those of you who are up at now probably 3 o'clock in the morning, taking the time to talk to us here in the East Coast of the United States. And thank you all for being such amazingly talented, creative, technically astute people, for creating this awesome piece of technology that we love to play with. We look forward to seeing what there is to come from you guys, and hopefully as a result of this podcast we can get more people to pitch in and help you along with some of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. It's great talking to you all. So for anybody who would like to follow you or find out more about what you're up to, if you could each just provide a way that people can keep in touch and see what you're doing.
It was really fun talking to you guys. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that
Thanks
was
for
great.
having us.
Very interesting. I think we have a dedicated page about us on the kibe.org website, the About Us page. So you can see about us here, and the most of the community activity is happening on the Google groups and on the IRC channel. So you can go here and talk to us, or anyway we try to cover all the bases, or be it Twitter or Facebook or Google Plus or Reddit, or we try to be everywhere, but the place we are the most active usually is the IRC. So if you want, come see us here.
Great.
And thank you, Chris and Tobias, for inviting us, because also this is the first time we are meeting in voice.
Yeah,
okay.
That's great.
Wow.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Well, it's Skype. It's pretty easy, so you guys should maybe take advantage of it and have meetings every once in a while. Although I know time zone difficulties can be a bit of a challenge, but sometimes it's worth it because it's a higher bandwidth mode of communication, right? I mean, like IRC and email and all this are wonderful, but sometimes the human voice, there's nothing like it. If you can't have face-to-face, this is the second best thing.
I think the only thing stopping us from doing that till now was hesitation, and we'll definitely take it cue and try to continue this.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we could get that started for you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.